I think this is a session that I did it long back, maybe in 2019. Let me give you a little bit introduction about who I am for people who don't know, right? I've been a product manager for the last 10 years, had the fortune of working with very good companies, Flipkart, Blackbuck, bunch of amazing companies. And in the last 3 years, right, when in my previous role, I was a director of product for a Series A funded startup, right? And most of you know me in one way or the other through my LinkedIn posts, through my YouTube content, in one way or the other, right? So fortunately, I was one of the first few people who started teaching product management to this ecosystem, right? How do you really think about things? And since then, things have changed a lot. We started our company, we started Rethink Systems, started teaching product in a more fundamental and functional way. But I think the philosophical thing that I want to kind of talk about is that I have had the good fortune of teaching thousands of students, right? Across indirectly, directly, in one way or the other, right? And today we are going to do a very similar session, which I did like 4 or 5 years back, that how do you prepare for a product management interview? The video of mine, which I did like long back, got like 30, 40, 50,000 views. And it was one of the most popular videos. And we'll do a reconstruct of that today, what is needed to essentially become a very good product manager, and how do you really aspire for that role, and why should you even aspire for this role even now, right? And that is something that, and I have tried to split it into two parts. So we'll try to cover whatever we can till 2 p.m. today, and we'll do another session of the same thing next Sunday. So we will typically try to do that. And more likely going forward, I am going to create more and more content for people, at least entry-level people, mid-level people, and even advanced level content, which I already did. But over the last 1 year, since we have been building our startup, it was not very possible for me to be the educator that I was. But I want to start back again with the grace of God. So we are going to start doing that. To kind of quickly start into the dynamic of this role is really important because it is one of the few roles which talks about the whole consumer experience, right? What I mean by whole consumer experience is, like, for example, for an engineer, what is the primary responsibility of an engineer? Somebody who's coding, to write very good code, scalable code, right? What is the primary responsibility of a marketer? To essentially market good people, right? Bring the right quality leads, bring the right quality interested people, right? Similarly, what's the primary responsibility of a salesperson, right? To do the right kind of sales, right? To give customers the right kind of value. But it is one of the few roles, right, which talks about not just sales, not just marketing, not just engineering, not just operations, but the whole consumer experience. What I mean by whole consumer experience is, what is the consumer experience? For example, you go to UPI or you go to Amazon, right? You first open the website, then you try to search for the right kind of product that you want, right? Then you essentially go to the product page, then you do an add to cart, post add to cart, then you make a payment. Then once you make a payment, then there is a post purchase cycle in which people essentially you get an invoice for it. Then if you have an issue, right, then in that scenario you raise to the customer success and say that I have an issue, I got the wrong product, or I got the right product, or things like that, whatever, right? Whatever you want to kind of call across. But for a product manager, not only these, just the first part, like searching a product, it is not enough. It is the complete journey that Shubham came. He able to find the right product? Was he able to purchase it the right way? Was he able to use it the right way? Did he get the right kind of experience that you wanted, right? And that's why it's so enterprising. That's why log bolte nahi hai. This is a very common thing, that product manager sits at the intersection of business, design, and things like that, right? Why is that? Because you're talking about the whole consumer experience. And why is this role more and more relevant, right? And it will become more and more relevant because problems are increasing, startups are increasing, right? That is happening, right? Now, simultaneously, then there is another part, that AI is coming. The role is becoming even more denser. There are going bigger and bigger problems which are going to come across. So you need people who can act as a sutradhar. It's a Hindi word. It's called sutradhar. Sutradhar basically means the strategic thinker who ties everything together and essentially reaches to a point where you kind of try to ship out the entire thing. So that's why this field is so enterprising. That's why it is so similar to entrepreneurship, right? That is why people who are entrepreneurs, they want to learn about the craft of product building, right? And what is the second most important thing of becoming a product manager? Eventually, it is about problem solving at scale. Scale is the word that is added with it, right? Because let's assume I pick up a problem and I say that, okay, serve me milk, right? And that is something that even a normal person can do for you. But if I just say the very same thing and say, serve 10 million customers at the same time at 7 a.m. in the morning, now that becomes a hard problem. That's not an easy thing to do, right? Simultaneously, let's assume you look at Uber, right? Uber, what is fundamentally Uber? It is an Excel sheet. There are cars at one side, there are people on the other side. The people want cars, the car people want service so that they can essentially earn revenue, right? But if I tell Dilip, how many cars can you manage? Dilip might say, okay, in a day, I can manage 100 transactions like that, 100 customers. Now I say, Dilip, now I scale that number to 500, will you be able to do it? He will say, maybe I will be, maybe in an Excel, I will break my head over it and I'll get this done. But if I say, Dilip, handle 10,000 in a day, now that becomes hard. That's not easy, right? Because let's assume you converted, you merged to a car to a user, and eventually you realize the car broke down or the car did not have a good service. Now think, for 100 customers, if one customer faces a problem, you can solve it. You can pick up the phone and fix it. But let's assume there are 1 lakh customers or 100,000 customers. And if 1% of your customers face problems, how many people that becomes? That becomes 1,000 users. Now that becomes hard. That's not easy. That's not easy. That is why this role became so important, because you had to bring solutions which could solve things at scale. Any problem which is at a fundamental level is a simple cellular problem, a simple problem, right? Going from one place to another, very simple problem. But if I say you have to do it for millions, like it is the very same way, like when you were administered COVID shots, right? If the population of the country would have been maybe like 1 lakh people, like in the Vatican City, it would have been a super easy thing to do. But why it became a very hard thing in India? Because there were 1.4 billion people, right? And you had to reach to every nook and corner of the country, right? You had to build that kind of a supply chain. You had to put that data in a very meaningful way. You had to show it to the customer in a very meaningful way. And that is why this role became supremely important. What is a company at the core of it? It is just a culmination of multiple problem solvers, and you together call it as an entity, right? Google, right? It's a culmination of like 1 lakh people who is trying to solve search for you, right? Uber, it's a culmination of 40,000 people who built a platform which are essentially trying to solve transportation for you, right? Zepto, it is a culmination of maybe 10,000 people who are trying to solve a fundamental 10-minute delivery for you, right? Or something like that, right? But now 10-minute delivery from in Bangalore, if there are 1 lakh people concurrently ordering, how do you get the right set of people? How do you get the right set of supply that you want to put across? How do you put the right pricing? And that is why people started looking at somebody who can look at the entire system in general, right? And that is the view of a product manager. And that is why the field is going to be super relevant, because now as you go deeper and deeper in 2025, 2026, problems are going to become bigger and bigger because your GDP is growing, right? There are bigger areas that you're trying to figure out. There is so much migration. People are moving to cities like Bangalore, Delhi, Hyderabad, right? More and more people are getting educated, right? And that is the reason you need someone who does not look at a problem from a lens of a single cellular unit, like what is the next best line of code, but also looks at it from a whole consumer experience for millions of customers using it. So today's basic lecture, why I wanted to set this context across for all of you, for you to understand that why this role is supremely important, right? It is not a role which is just conversations with people. If you are not solving the problem for the end user, right, you're not a good product manager. For example, let me give you an example. Let's assume you build a product, whatever that product is, but nobody uses it, right? Do you think you will blame the engineer? Not really. He or she coded and built the right platform. Will you blame the marketing person? Not really. You will say, because that person, you only told him that this is a very meaningful product. That person brought people who are interested in that. Will you essentially blame the salesperson? Not really. He tried to pitch your service. He tried to do everything. So all of these people will get paid. But if the product fails, you are getting fired. You're getting fired, right? And that is why you are only loyal if the end consumer actually derived value. For example, like I'm a product manager. If after this session, none of you derive any value from this session, no matter my team was sitting here, no matter how many problems answered I gave, no matter whatever I did a poor job. I did a poor job because you did not derive any value from the session. For example, I hope you derive a lot of value from this session, but then again, I was just giving you a fundamental example around it. Okay, cool. So today I want to kind of talk about how do you prepare for a product management interview. And I think there are 3-4 major agendas, and we will diverge from each of the agenda here and there. But typically, I want to keep it so actionable for you so that you can start thinking from your journey's perspective. And whatever, we'll not try to cover everything today, because I want to cover whatever we cover in detail. We cover in a very thorough manner. And then next Sunday, you guys can come again and we can essentially join and we can cover the entire piece. Okay? So आज 2 बजे तक हम whatever we can cover, we'll try to cover that. Okay? So the first thing that I want to kind of talk about is building a profile that gets shortlisted. This is a question that day in day out every day I get DMs. भैया मैंने अपना resume बनाया, but nobody gives me a shortlist. Nobody, because I don't come from a product management background. I come from a service background. I am a salesperson. I am a marketing person. I work in Wipro. I work in TCS. I have 15 years of experience. I have 5 years of experience. I'm a fresher. That's the first thing that we're going to talk about. Okay? Second, bhaiya, how do I build a very good resume? Because everybody thinks that it's the resume only which gets you shortlisted. That's also a myth. But then again, we'll talk about that, right? What does a good product management resume truly look like, right? And how do you tailor your resume so that it looks like that you have that kind of skill set? Third, what are the core concepts that you truly need to now getting shortlisted is one thing, but you have to do meaningfully well in the interview also, right? Right? So how do you do that? Fourth, what kind of interview questions typically people expect, but what kind of they expect is zyada important hai, why they expect so. The why is equally important, right? Because let's assume Ganapati comes into an interview and I ask him an art question. Make me a painting. Will that question be asked in a product management interview? Not really. So what kind of questions are? Then what are the effective problem solving techniques? How should you learn? Is there a Baba ki booty? Is there something like Lord Shiva will come and he will bless you and you will become better at it? Not really, right? Then why should you upskill? And then what are the primary hooks for your PM journey, right? What's your goal? Your goal is actionable steps that will increase your chances of getting the right. Again, getting the product management job, nahi, getting the right product management job. Today, nowadays, there are so many JDs. People write the JD of a project manager, say that you have to put Excel, you have to make Jira tickets, you have to build some kind of a service, and then they say it's a PM role. Not really, right? So how do you even enterprise what is the right JD for a PM role, right? Second, what are the typical lessons that are typically needed while you're hiring or getting hired? So let me first start with the first question, which is the first part. How do you build a profile that gets shortlisted? Right? Now let me quickly start. I told you that a product manager is typically a problem solver at scale, right? Who thinks of the entire consumer experience from any industry. It can be any damn industry. It doesn't have to be edtech, health tech, fintech, SaaS. Any problem at scale which is meaningful, like COVID was a very meaningful problem, UPI was a very meaningful problem, Aadhaar was a very meaningful problem, DigiLocker was a very, very meaningful problem, Uber was a very meaningful problem. So in all domains, because there is so much population in India and at least voluminous places, problems exist, right? And that is why we essentially would try to understand what are the 3-4 main meaningful things that should stand out. Now, first thing, nowadays, if you are a very good problem solver, the first attribute of a problem solver is a problem solver doesn't tells. He shows things. he doesn't say things. That saying has little meaning. That I am good at this. It should show by your work, right? So the first lesson that I learned in my life as a product manager over the last 10 years was that when there is an interview day, the interviewer should know you even before the interview. Now, how does that happen? Now, you will ask me, how does that happen? Why would somebody essentially do that? Right? If today somebody has to know, is Shravan a good product manager or not a good product manager? Does he have to come to Shravan? Not really. He'll just go on LinkedIn, he'll go on Google, he'll go on YouTube, and he'll see what I'm doing. Right? He'll look at my portfolio, he'll look at the type of companies that I've worked at, right? So that is the reason you're sitting here. How many of you have not never spoken to you, but you're sitting here still, right? So did I have to prove to you that I am a good product manager or not? Not really, because there was enough and why content available everywhere, right? To tell you that this person will add some meaningful. Maybe some of you knew, okay, I am trying experimenting it out. This person seems like a good person. Some people are my students only, which are sitting in the call, right? Which have already taught from me. Some people are not necessarily my direct students, but they've seen a lot of videos of mine on YouTube. So they have understood, oh, wow, this person teaches well. So everybody has some level of value, right? But even before you met me, right? That happened. So today, nowadays, this is not the world of resumes. It is not that world anymore, because the funding cycles, the hiring cycles, they work in cyclical ways, right? When there is too much capital in the market, people typically hire everyone, right? They say that if somebody has a skill set, I will try to hire them. I will later figure out in the company in 6 months down the line, what is the true meaningful value of this person. Like, for example, I will go, and if Yogesh is from a good college, I'll go, is Yogesh analytical? Is Yogesh smart? Is Yogesh logical? Okay, let me hire him. Let me hire him. And then in 3 months, I will figure out which project, which work does he fit in, and essentially will give them across. Now that happens when there is too much funds in the market, because people have capital. But the moment funds are taken out, it's stock market cycles. If the number of roles are 100, they decrease to 10, right? Then they become very, very particular. No, I want this person for this kind of specific role. Then only I'll hire that person, right? Now that is really, really important. And if in order in this world for you to stand out, people, what they typically do, they look at a position everywhere and everybody starts applying. If I am an interviewer, right, and for a position I get 600 or 700 applications, right, is it humanly possible, even if this is true that Ganapati might have the right kind of project that I wanted, but if his application is application number 550, will I even reach there? I'll never reach there. Even though it might be so that Ganapati has the exact same requirement that I wanted. But it is humanly impossible for me to even reach to application number 550 and figure out that Ganapati was the right person for me. So the first person who gets in my way, who I think is slightly similar, I say, "Isi se baat kar lete hain. Let's figure this out. Let's close this position. That is really important for me." So how do you stand out? You stand out by consistently building a social profile. What people used to do back then, it was not just in the area of, in the time of social media. It was also in the time earlier. If you look at very good engineers, like the CTO of Stack Overflow, the CTO of GitHub, they used to have their own blogs. Engineers used to have their own blogs where they used to write technical content. Why? Because people used to say, okay, I have never spoken to this person, and now I'm going to spend 60 minutes of my time with this person. So how do I essentially know that whether this person has depth or not? So the first thing that you should realize is that you only stand out when the interviewer knows you even before the interview started. And how does that happen? Like, for example, I essentially am going to an interview. I will go to your LinkedIn profile. I'll try to understand what you have done. Have you written? A lot of people don't write on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is not a job seeking platform. Unfortunately, people see it like that. It is not. It is a networking platform. It tells you what Shravan has done. It tells you what you have done. And you consistently write. And that is how you build a social profile, right? That's the first tip I want to take away with your resume, that have a social presence. If you don't, and how do you build a social presence? Does it get built in a day? Not really. It's like gym. right? You have to go every day. You have to write every day. You don't have to get disheartened by the fact that somebody wrote a bad comment on your post, right? Nobody cares. If somebody is not helping you when you write a post and not helping you in your journey, then why do you care really about somebody writing a bad comment for you or something like that, right? So the first thing I want you to do, besides we'll talk about the resume obviously, but we'll talk about the first thing I want to say is build social proof, right? The first tip that I want to kind of talk about is this is not a time where if you think that you make a resume and you keep applying and you will get, and if you get a short list, it's a lucky thing, it's a lucky guess that somebody got lucky, that's a great thing, right? But if you consistently put out something, maybe a blog on Medium, and we will talk about what are the topics, like 5 mistakes that I did while I was preparing for the role, right? Then maybe what I learned from a talk by Lenny Rachitsky, what I learned by this very session that you had that happened today. There are tons of topics. You just have to be consistent, because what will happen? See, I'll give you an example. For example, there are recruiters all across LinkedIn. Now, you never wanted a PM role, but you wrote every day and your posts start coming in front of people, right? Now, one fine day, you say that I want a role. The recruiter has seen it. You don't know how many people have seen it. There are a lot of people from different companies who have seen it. You apply for that role and you say, oh, this is the same person who I saw that this person has an interesting perspective. Why don't I give her a chance and essentially talk to her? Right? That's the first thing. ठीक है, यहां तक सब मेरे साथ है, आगे चलते हैं, ठीक है? So build credibility even before you walk through the door. That's priceless. That's something that people really, really respect. Second, now that this is a very common question that people tell me, PM roles usually require prior experience. Catch 22, right? भैया मेरे पास PM experience नहीं है तो मैं PM कैसे बनूं? मैं PM नहीं हूं तो मैं PM experience कहां से लाऊं? Happens? Give me a yes in the chat, right? A lot of people tell me this, especially freshers. They end up saying, भैया कि मेरे पास PM experience नहीं है तो मैं PM कैसे बनूं? अगर मेरे पास PM experience नहीं है तो अगर मैं PM नहीं हूं तो PM experience कहां से लेके आऊं, right? The second myth I want to break today is, for getting good at product management, you don't need to be in an office with a title. That's the second thing that I want to break today. Please try and understand this, right? मैं आपको example देता हूं. Let me show you my portfolio. ठीक है? Let me just quickly show you my portfolio. This is my product portfolio, right? Again, I did not need to update it since a long time for good reasons and bad reasons, but I just want to kind of talk about it, right? And I'll share it across. Now, I've worked in a lot of companies, right? This was a competitor analysis that I did for Whatfix, right? Whatfix was another company which works in typically FTU space. We'll talk later about it. But what I want to tell you is, have I ever worked for Whatfix? Not really. You know that, you have seen my pro. I've never worked for Whatfix. Have I worked for a company like Victra? Never. Have I worked for Flipkart? Okay. Have I worked for Google for that matter? No, I haven't. Right? So if in order to solve a problem, now what you essentially do here, let's assume I wanted to kind of solve a problem. This is my PRD, right? So I picked up a problem. Sorry, this is here. Give me a second. Just a second. There you go. This is not the PRD. Let's look at this PRD. Makes sense, right? Let's look at any kind of PRD. Yes. I've never worked for a task management thing, but I knew that it is a problem that exists in the market. The task management is something everybody wants to manage their time. Everybody wants a product which can help them manage their time. I picked up a problem. I tried to solve it. We'll go deeper into it. How do you solve it and how do you don't solve it? That's the second question. But what I'm trying to put across to you is that you don't necessarily need a PM experience to gain PM experience, right? What I mean by that is, for example, you saw that Swiggy recently released group ordering. How many of you have used group ordering by Swiggy or Zomato? Was it not a problem? Was it not something when you were sitting at home and you wanted to order biryani and ice cream together? You had to do 2 orders. You had to order one biryani and then you had to do a order again, right? And group ordering, obviously, in group ordering, there was also one more thing that they solved. What did they solve? That lot of times when you do a party, there are 5 friends who are sitting together. One person ends up paying. And the other person has to get money from everybody. Please give me this money. Please give me this money, right? They solved that also. Did they not? So they did, right? They did that, right? Was it not a problem that you knew, you understood? right? Which was basically, give me a second, yeah, just a sec, sorry. So was that not a problem that you actually faced, right? Similarly, if you pick up any good problem, like for example, another good problem, Netflix nowadays has catch 22. You never find the right movies for yourself, right? How do you build a better recommendation? Like a lot of people, like for example, there are people who are Tamil, who are Telugu, who are, and they want filters like that. Do you build such a filter? Do you do things like that? You do the problem discovery, make a detailed document around it, and you get a sense of what was the problem, why did I solve it, and that becomes something like a portfolio for you, where you say that this is how I thought, this was the problem that I figured out. Let's assume Yogesh wants to build a house, and he says that building a house is a very challenging thing because you have to figure out what is the right design, then the right material, then when should I build it, how should I deploy, is there delay because the workers are not coming on time? Now, is there a management service which can help me do it in a meaningful way, and I don't have to go to an architect which takes 3 lakh rupees from me to do the same thing? Again, a very relevant problem. How do I buy the right car? Again, a very relevant problem. So you can pick up any damn problem and you can solve it in a meaningful way. Put that in a place in Notion, in Google Docs, in Drive, wherever you want to put it. And that essentially solves that problem, that you don't require PM experience. That is not something what people expect, right? Because one of the things I keep saying, if there is a company which says that for a fresher, they require 5 years of experience, apologies, that's not a good culture company. Please, that is true, right? So again, what was the starting of the interview? I said a good product management role. I didn't say a product management role. कहीं भी PM लिखा वो PM नहीं होता. पहले मैं क्लियर कर देता हूं आपको, right? So a good company realizes that the value of a product manager is in the thought process and the skill sets, right? The value. So, and why do they choose experience? Because they believe experience builds that across over time. But can people not do that? Do you have to pay like 50,000 rupees to a bodybuilder to become a bodybuilder? Not really. You can go into the gym, you can learn from the internet, and you can do it yourself. So that's the second myth I'm breaking today, right? You don't need PM experience in a controlled setting to say that I have PM experience. Not really. Cool. आगे चलते हैं, ठीक है? So even this journey of you making your resume, applying and researching, interviewing, everything is making you smarter, right? Even you applying somewhere, it's making you smarter, right? It's making you better, right? So this is the second. And third thing that I want to put across is job hunting makes you smarter. It really makes you smarter. How will I? How do you essentially do that? Now, look at it from this perspective. If you go and apply to every damn job on the internet, right? How are you different? Why are you different? Why should I do that? How did you do your discovery even deeply to understand what the job entails? Right? That is the problem. When I started my PM journey, right? I told people to essentially build a product portfolio, and now it has become so bad, right? That everybody puts the same GCPT case studies. Why would the interviewer be interested in you? Like, I was the first person probably in the ecosystem who said that making a product portfolio is relevant. It's 2018 when I said this, 2017 when I said this, right? And 2025, I'm sitting here. Every damn aspirant comes to me, says, Bhaiya, maine ye course kiya, this 5 case studies I have. That's why I am a good PM. Really? Does that really mean that? Not really. A case study or a problem should give you insights that, oh, I read this. Oh, this is a new thing I got to know, right? It should not be that, oh, this is the problem statement, this is the PRD, this is the metric. That is great, but I should take something away from it and say that, wow, like it is like, who do you conversate with? Who is your friend, right? Who do you make a friend? When you meet a friend, you like it, you match that vibe. It is a very similar thing for an interviewer also. If in an interview, I don't even remember who Yogesh, if you could not make a kind of a benchmark or a dent on my thinking, why would I remember you? I would say, no, that doesn't make sense, right? And that comes when you essentially bring insights to the table. Now, what is an insight? Insight is the why behind why something is working or not working, right? Observations lead to insights. but not every observation is an insight. Again, observation lead to insights, but not every observation an insight. Like, for example, Yogi sitting here is an observation that he wants to learn something about product. But what is the insight? Why does he want to do it? That I don't know yet, right? There is a background to it. He might say that I come from X background, Y background. I like this because of this. I saw some PM doing it. I saw the kind of impact that he made. That is insight, right? For example, what is an observation? Zomato does group ordering. That's an observation, right? What is an insight? Why did they build it? That's the insight, right? PMs are paid for insights per minute. Please try and understand that. If you don't bring an insight to the table, you're not a good product manager. I'm being very clear about this. So all insights are observations, but every observation is not an insight, right? But in order to get insight, you have to be observant. You have to see why somebody's sitting here. Like, for example, I see tons of people not showing their faces. That's an observation, which essentially means some people are shy. Some people are doing something else, maybe in the background. Some people are saying that, okay, will I look like a fool if I ask this question? Some people are saying, no, I'm doing something, I'm walking somewhere, they're probably traveling, right? That's an observation. Isn't that an observation that out of 75 people, only 10 people are showing their faces? 65 are not, right? Some people are saying, oh, maybe I learned something from this session. Maybe I don't learn something from this session. At least let me chime in. It's free. It's free, right? These are all observations. But why are they doing it? That's an insight. That's something that you do, right? Makes sense. So job hunting really tells you to discern between observations and insights. So if you look at a job, look at their JD. If the JD is not detailed enough, it tells you that they don't care about the role enough. If they don't care about the role enough, do you want to be there? Do you want to be in such a company, right? In an enterprise company, when they write similar JDs, what is the observation there? That most PM roles of an enterprise big companies are very similar. What does it tell you? That you are a cog in a wheel. It is how they think. Look at the role. That's how it works. That's why you typically see companies like huge companies, like big company. I don't want to name them because I don't want to get called out. But then again, big companies, very similar roles. But companies, startups, which are very particular about that this kind of a PM I need. Like you see, the founder of Zepto recently posted that they want PMs who are good at AI product management. And he put out a very custom post about it, that this is the background I need. This is typically how I think about the role. That tells them that they care about the role enough. So even the small signals that you see on the internet, they tell you a lot about the dynamic of the role in the company. That's what people don't notice. So one skill set that you have to earn, that if you really want to become a good PM, be curious. Look, question every small thing that you see, that why is it happening that way? Next. So what are hiring managers truly looking for? So what I'm trying to essentially put out to you is, this is so true that the generic experiences at a lot of places, they typically look for people who come from IITs. I am myself from an IIT. I get that. But why is that? You have to question that. Why is that? The first question is, if the company does not really value the role much, then it is just an elimination criteria for them. It's just an elimination criteria. They think that their time will be better relevant if they come from a certain background, or if that person is there in their team, they can brag about it. They can say, oh wow, this person was from an IIT, this person was from Stanford, this person was like this or that, right? But there is a second part also Dilip bhai there, right? The second part is, it builds credibility. I'll give you an example. Why do people typically hire from, at least it tells you one thing, that out of 10 lakh people, when he had to prepare for an exam, he was in the top 5,000 or 6,000, and he was analytically sharp. At least it tells you that. I am not saying whether that person is a good person, bad person, debatable. I don't want to talk about that. But at least एक चीज तो वो clear कर रहा है. It is telling you one thing, that this person is analytically sharp, for sure.
Yes.
I'm not saying culturally sharp, morally sharp. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying analytically sharp. Same goes with IIM also, right? That this person comes with a network. That means credibility is one of the factors that is really important for you to get shortlisted. Make sense? Now a person might say, लेकिन भैया मैं तो IIT से नहीं हूं, मैं तो IIM से नहीं हूं, तो how do I get shortlisted? Question है ना ये बिल्कुल relevant question है ना ये. The thing is, what is the answer? You have to build credibility in some way, right? If that not from being an IIT should compensate in some other way, correct? Right? For a lot of people, it is about, oh, I built a business. Like, I'll give you an example. I know a student of mine, and there are tons of such students, who was from VIT Computer Science, and he's a small kid, recently graduated. I think 2 years back he graduated, and he's like 2 years experience. Do you know what he did? And now VIT is a decent college. It's not IIT. It's not a bilkul local college, a tier 3 college. It's somewhere in between, right? Do you know what he did? He essentially took all my data, looked at a problem. He said, people want to learn from creators, right? But it is very hard to learn from creators. Shravan ki sari posts dekhna is highly impossible, because he has written 3,000 posts. And if I want to find that one relevant post, which is relevant to me, where I want to learn, how do I discover that? He took that problem, downloaded all my LinkedIn data, put it in an LLM, created a LinkedIn course out of it, used his own LinkedIn profile to promote it, sold it to 10 influencers, made some money about it, put that in his profile. Do you know what happened? Within 3 months, he got a crore. Why? Because he proved that he built a small business and he made 5 lakh rupees out of that business. Now, what did he do? He stood out. He stood out in some meaningful way. Similarly, I am not from Google. Why do product managers from Google study from me? नहीं पढ़ने चाहिए. They should not. They should say Shravan is not from Google. Why do I have students from 10 plus countries, from Meta, Google, and other places? Because they don't care about IIT. IIT तो 10 साल हो गए मेरे दोस्त. 10 साल पहले किसको याद है? 10 years it has been. So people don't care. I built my credibility other way around. I built my credibility through content. I built my credibility by reaching out to people and teaching them. I built my credibility simultaneously by making proof points which stood out. Now you are saying that you will not do it. You will not create a social profile. You will not build credibility that way. You will not invest time over there. And you will say, no, my resume is not getting. Obviously, if I had a chance, out of 20 people, out of 3 I know are from IIT Bombay, why would I give you a chance? You never stood out in any place. So that is where sometimes it's not about the question, mere dost. Sometimes it's not about the solution. It's about how you look at the problem. I know tons and tons of my students who are not from IITs and IIMs, who got through to roles in the last 7-8 months only. You can see tons of them on the Rethink Systems website, and see how many of them have IIT, IIM in their profile. Check that out. You will find a disproportionate number of people who are not from there. How did it happen for them? Did Shravan Bhaiya give a referral to everyone? Not really. So that's what I'm trying to tell you. So I am with you. I am not disregarding your point that it is a factor. But if that point of credibility is not with you, build credibility some other way. And that is where you have to stand out. And if you're not willing, if you follow the same method that you'll go to Naukri.com, tell them to optimize your resume, and then they will write some good jargonous points on it, and then you keep applying to 20 places, then you're leaving it to luck. That some out of some 50 interviewers, one fine day, one interviewer will see, oh, Dilip apparently has the same profile that I want, and he gets shortlisted. And then after 2 years, when you want to leave the job, you still are stuck in the same dilemma. Now, how do I stand out? And that is the reason people come back to me after every 2 years. Now, I was in that job. I somehow got this job, but the next job I'm not getting. The next job I'm not getting. The next job I'm not getting. That is why I said, move out of this structure, build some credibility for yourself in some meaningful way. And then that will always stay with you over a period of time. Now, today I'm doing a startup, right? Tomorrow my startup, God forbid, fails, right? If I have to go back, it's not just my experience that's going to stand out. Experience is great that I have 8-9 years of a product management experience. But what is also going to stand out is that I built a startup. I taught so many students. I had such a social profile. It stood out. And that is what will stand out. And that is where I will have better negotiating power with those people to say that I'm a great person, right? Makes sense. So to answer your question, I am not disregarding your fact. I am just saying, if you don't, अगर एक चीज नहीं है ना आपके पास, तो दूसरी चीज build करो, right? If one thing you don't have it, and उस चीज के अब IIT के निकालने के लिए लोगों को 2 साल लगे. Can you not spend 3 months, 4 months to build a decent LinkedIn profile? Can you not do that? People took 2 years to crack that person who you're saying they only shortlist them, or they went to Stanford. They spent 3 years of their life or 4 years of their life to get into that school. You didn't, right? Now I am saying, fair enough, that happened in the past. Can you not spend the next 6 months if you're truly, really, really vested into the role and 6 months in building a very meaningful profile? I'll give you an example. Look at Kevin. Kevin is in the call. Kevin is a friend of mine. Go and check out Kevin Thomas, right? Look at his journey. There are tons of such people in the community who essentially do such things. I think Kevin would be in the call. I'm not sure. Go and check out his profile. He's not from an IIT. He's not from an IIM, right? Then slowly and steadily he essentially. So that is what I'm trying to put across. Make sense? आगे चलते हैं, ठीक है? So let's take a step back before. What does the product manager do? The product manager is responsible for discovering a product that is useful, usable, and feasible. These three words are very important. Useful, usable, and feasible. All three things are, what is useful? Solves a user problem. Usable basically means is easy to use. Like for example, if you go to makemytrip.com and on makemytrip.com, the actual from and to is on some random page. It's not usable then. Or if you go to Uber and you open and you say Uber has that functionality to book a cab, but you have to discover it after 20 clicks. That's not a usable product, right? Usable means how easy it is to use. Like for example, do you know that the iPhone, that is usability basic, and do you realize that the iPhone is as powerful as a supercomputer was 20 years back? And how easy it takes you 5 minutes to set that up. Literally 5 minutes. How usable they have made it. And what is feasible? Feasible का मतलब होता है commercially viable, right priced to the audience, right? Let's assume, and that is the reason, like let's assume there is a car that Tesla is an amazing car. Everybody knows that, right? But is it really feasible for the Indian audience currently? Not really. But if let's assume you're able to buy a Tesla for 10 lakh rupees, and most people in India, let's assume, at least in metro cities, they earn 12, 15 lakh rupees and they're able to afford it. Nobody is going to buy an Honda City. Everybody is going to buy a Tesla only. Unless if they have there are caveats that they have a charging network and things like that and whatever and whatnot. But if in an ideal scenario, if it was a car which costed 8 to 10 lakh rupees, just from the usefulness and the usability of it, it would have been a very meaningful thing to buy that across, right? So the 5 things that are the essential attributes of a PM that really a hiring manager is looking for is 1. It's called has product sense. What is product sense? There you go. So product sense is nothing but an ability to see that how a product essentially solves a user problem. That's the ability to essentially discern that. It is the ability to make meaningful micro and macro decisions in a product which solve a user problem. Meaningful micro and macro decisions in a product which solve a user problem. If your decisions that you take in a product essentially solve a user problem in a more meaningful way, and out of 10 decisions, 8 decisions are right, you have very good product sense, right? If out of 10 decisions, only 1 decision is right, like for example, Ganapati suggests 10 features and he says 10 different features, and out of that only 1 feature gets adoption. That means he has very poor product sense. He doesn't understand what the user truly wants. But out of that, those 10 decisions, if 8 features are actually used and people start using it and they use them to solve their problems, he has very good product sense. So product sense is the ability to make meaningful micro and macro decisions about the product layer through which you can meaningfully solve user problems. Like, for example, मैं छोटा सा example आपको देता हूँ. UPI. What did it do? Before UPI experiences, you go on a website, then you click on pay now, then you go to the bank page, there's a drop off there, the bank page, the internet didn't work, right? Then you go to the bank page, OTP used to come, OTP failed. What will you do then? वो भी खत्म. उसके बाद, then after that, if the OTP failed, for example, the money got debited, but it never reached to the merchant. That is also a problem. 4th, you had to put account number, details, and things like that. UPI, what did it do? It said, if there is already authentication every bank takes at least 1 primary number to authenticate, right? So why do I need why can't I fetch it across? Why can't I build something which actually pulls that data? So solve that one problem. Second, it said, why does everybody need a new OTP? Right? Why can't it be like an ATM experience only? That is the second thing. Third thing that they said, why does the transaction settlement take 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours? Why can't it be a faster settlement, right? If authentication is done. So there was some product manager who looked at that journey and started making meaningful decisions every place, that this is meaningful, this is meaningful. Then he said, okay, if that is there, then if I look at it concurrently, if there are 1 million people using it, how will I handle for concurrent scale? So there was some product manager which started thinking from these perspectives. और यही तो इंटरव्यू में भी पूछते हैं. Like मैं गणपति को पूछूंगा, गणपति make me a UPI product, right? If he straight away jumps and says, oh, I'll make this feature. No, first he will say, okay, let me look at the journey. What happens in a typical payment journey? He will say this, like first authenticate, second reach the merchant page, third drop off at the merchant page, fourth reaching the success page, from a success page success confirmation from the bank, then from the bank then invoice. Once he said this journey, the interviewer understood, oh, he understands the journey, he understands it well. Then he says, okay, now I want to prioritize what are the most important problems in this journey. He will prioritize. He will say, the biggest problem I think, sir, is that there is a very big drop off when you reach the merchant page. So I think internet problems are an issue. Or second, OTP success rates are only 75% or 90% in our country. There's a 10% failure over there, right? Then he prioritizes that. And then he jumps to the solution space. He goes and says, now I want to build this. It shows he has product sense. What do majority people do? They come, they jump. They say, भैया सपोर्ट टिकट बढ़ के एक चैटबॉट लगा दो सर, हो गया काम, खत्म कहानी. ऐसे थोड़ी होता है यार. That is not how it works. So product sense is the ability. तो ये first चीज टेस्ट की जाती है in a product interview. What is the second thing? So the ability to usually make the right decisions, both macro and micro. ठीक है. Second is smart. What do you mean by is smart? Well, you should be looks wise smart. I'm not that smart. I understand that. But then again, is smart basically means is analytical, is able to break down a problem from an analytical point of view. What I mean by that is, for example, why do you think people ask these things like guesstimates and things like that? At least in entry-level interviews, they do ask guesstimates. Why do they do that? The reason is very simple. It talks about 2-3 things. It tells me that are you able to break down a problem in an ambiguous setting? And second, are you well versed with the market? Like, for example, if I typically say that, can you tell me how many cars get sold in a Bangalore in a day? Which is again not a very good question, but it is telling me 2-3 things. One, I should know the population of Bangalore by design. Pata hona chahiye mere ko. Right? Similarly, when somebody is smart, it typically says the person is very horizontal in its things. He's able to know the basic things about the ecosystem. What I mean by that is population of the country, penetration of smartphone penetration, internet penetration, because then only you will be able to make meaningful guesstimates and suggestions. Because even in a senior interview, let's assume you are a director level interview, they will ask you, what is the market size of this particular vertical that we are launching, right? Like, I want to launch jewelry as a vertical in Blinkit. How large is the market? Now, if you have no understanding of how large, what is the typical unit economic size of what people purchase in different cities, what is the most preferred type of jewelry that people buy, what is the population of major cities and things like that, you will never be able to come up with an estimate, which essentially tells you that you have not done your discovery. Hence proved, I got my answer, right? So that is the reason product managers have to be very horizontal and they have to be consistently updated with what is happening into the ecosystem. It is not just for an APM. I am talking about even at a principal PM level. When I got through to a principal PM level, I was asked this very same question. What is the size of synchronous learning education in the country? Now, because of this very same question, I had to know the total volume of audiences in the country. I had to know what is synchronous education. I had to know how does that learning translate. I had to know what is the typical purchase size of people, what they do. So that is what it means by smart. And there is something called a Fermi's estimate. What is the Fermi's estimate? Fermi's estimate basically means, and it comes from the very famous scientist Enrico Fermi, right? It comes from there. Fermi's estimate basically means typically when you come to a target size of a particular vertical or the strategy of a particular vertical where you have to estimate something, right? If you are aware of the basic principles and fundamentally the basic numbers which are very, very accountable for every person. Like how many people use UPI? UPI transactions are by NCPI ki website pe available hai. Every month you get to know how many UPI transactions typically happens in India, right? If you do that, typically your estimate will be very close to the right number, almost 10-15%. So that essentially means that you are well versed with what is happening in the market. That's the second thing. Okay. What is the third thing? Gets things done. That is also important, right? So in an interview, you will have to showcase that you actually get things done, right? That how that happens is again a thing that we will talk about. Fourth, this is typically tested in a skill set, is a culture fit. It's a very, very important thing. People miss this. What do you mean by culture fit? Believe me, communication in a product interview is way more important than people realize. Because, like, I'll give you an example. मैं आपको एक छोटा सा example देता हूँ. If you are in a product interview and the interviewer does not make you feel comfortable, right? Comfortable का क्या मतलब होता है? He does not say, "Hi Yogesh, how are you? How are you doing? Are you feeling good today?" Right? Then, and he does not listen to you, right? He does not. Now, how will you feel? You'll feel bad, right? Let's assume you do the same thing. That person is trying to ask you a question and you cut him multiple times in between. That person got his answer, not a culture fit. Doesn't work, right? Culture is how you act. That is, and it happens in the smallest of things in the product interview. It happens in the very smallest of things. It is that is where curious people notice them. They notice how you answer. Like, for example, you say that, okay, I gave you a question, and within 10 seconds, you start giving an answer. It will tell to the interviewer that this person doesn't think. He does not rationally first try to understand what the problem is. These are the very small things that are noticed, and most cultural communication is non-verbal, my friend. It is not verbal, it is non-verbal. That is the fourth thing. And the last thing, you have technical skills. And again, technical skills is a very broad thing I'm saying here. Here, technical skills don't mean technology. It also means domain expertise. Like you're from banking, so that's also a technical skills or a functional expertise that you carry, right? अब ये पांचों चीजें टेस्ट की जाती हैं एक प्रोडक्ट इंटरव्यू में. क्या आपके पास प्रोडक्ट सेंस है? क्या आप एनालिटिकली शार्प हो? डू यू अंडरस्टैंड द कोर मेट्रिक्स? Like, do you understand enough about the market? Have you done your discovery? Third, are you able to showcase that you can get things done? That comes from a profile. Even your social profile is getting things done. If you write every day and are consistent, it shows that you get things done. You write, you build proof points. Fourth, you are a culture fit. How do you conduct yourself? If you know how to conduct yourself, if you know how to talk, if you know how to make meaningful sense of things. And last, do you have functional expertise? Do you know about the ecosystem? Do you know about tech? Because eventually most product roles nowadays are fundamentally online products, right? So you should have some level of technical expertise, right? You don't necessarily have to be really deep and know low level system design and things like that, but still a basic understanding of how internet works, how typical architectures work, so that you have a lingo to communicate with developers, so that when you essentially build them across, right, they should not feel that you're dumb, that what you're saying you have no clue about it, right? So a good PMS has product sense, is smart. Third, gets things done, showcases that gets things done. Even Ganapati making a portfolio shows gets things done. That he built his view, he built something on paper. Saying has little value. Show, don't tell. कुछ किया है ना, आपको बिना देखे होना चाहिए. वो श्रवण अच्छा है, श्रवण की बात से नहीं होगा. वो श्रवण ने जो किया है वो देख के आप पता करोगे इज ही गुड और नॉट. फोर्थ इज अ कल्चर फिट. कैसे कंडक्ट करते हो खुद को? डू यू लिसन वेल? डू यू एंड बिलीव मी, अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल आस्क मी दिस क्वेश्चन. आई एम जंपिंग द क्यू, बट ये भी मुझसे काफी लोग पूछते हैं, भैया हमें कैसे पता चलेगा इफ इट्स अ गुड कल्चर और नॉट? डू यू नो हाउ यू डू दैट? 90% of the time is look at the interview process. Were you comfortable there? Were you feeling vulnerable? Did the other person make you feel bogged down? And if your heart says na no, that was not the case, right, and that was the case, never join. A bad culture is worse than being unemployed, believe me. Believe me, this is the truth. People might, I wrote it on LinkedIn and people bashed me left, right, and center and said कि नहीं ऐसा नहीं होता. But believe me, I have seen people losing, because if you lose your confidence, money can be earned back. Once confidence is lost, na, it takes enormous amount of time to build back that confidence again. So always surround yourself. You are the sum total of the 5 people that you are with. If your 5 people are billionaires, you will be the 6th billionaire. If your 5 people are people who are generally people who are not very ambitious in life, you will end up being there only. तो हर एक इंसान जो आपसे तमीज से बात करता है आपका दोस्त नहीं होता. प्लीज मेरी बात समझो. दिस इज समथिंग दैट आई एम सेइंग वेरी डीप, राइट? एवरीबody who parties with you is not your friend. A friend is someone who can be the right critic at the right time and be a supporter at the right time, right? ठीक है, आगे चलते हैं. ठीक है, अब यू अंडरस्टैंड नाउ व्हाट डू पीपल इसेंशियली रिक्वायर इन अ पीएम रोल. ठीक है, आगे चलते हैं. अब आप स्टार्ट कैसे करोगे? ठीक है, तो उससे पहले हम ये बात करते हैं, पहले ये पता करते हैं कि आपको ये सब की भी अंडरस्टैंडिंग होनी चाहिए कि वेदर यू विल ट्रूली एंजॉय प्रोडक्ट मैनेजमेंट और नॉट. मोस्ट पीपल थिंक दैट पीएम्स आर दिस, द फेस ऑफ द प्रोडक्ट, highly compensated, visionary, leader, mom will be proud, right? Do you know what is the reality? This is reality. Angry customers, lost engineers to other projects, incompetent staff, buggy product, no authority, no time to call mom, the high level boss, sales driven culture, disastrous reviews. If you're not okay with ambiguity in your life, this role is not for you. You will not thrive at it. And that is the reason I see a lot of people with 10 years, 11 years, 15 years of PM experience, fluff. Go one level deep. Kahani wahi khatam. Right? That is the reason those people don't typically stand out. A person who has very good product management skill set will never use jargons. Never. Never, I am saying never. ये जो होते हैं ना, ये जो words, orthogonal growth, fundamental growth, this is all gyan. If you cannot explain the fundamental user journey in very simple words, I'm sorry, it's all gyan. And yes, there are a lot of companies which hire those kind of people, but are those really good product companies? That is not really. You don't join. Which bank? Let me ask you very, very fundamentally. Which bank do you think is a very, very product oriented bank? Not really. There are not many banks. There are old products that people have made. Even they're still using mainframes, right? They might put the title as a product because it's lucrative, because that's how they hire people, but not really. Good product companies are those companies which have an exceedingly well product-led experience. Something like a Calendly, something like an Intercom, something like Google. Very, very nice. Something like Netflix, right? Something like Blinkit, which are shipping very fast, right? Those are really good companies. Razorpay, very good company, very good product company, right? But everywhere where you see a title of a product manager and you join there and you really think that it's super meaningful, not really, because it doesn't really need very good product-led acumen, because people can compensate it through sales also. For a system to work and become a big company, right? You don't necessarily need only product-led growth. Sales-led growth can also work, right? There are multiple ways of doing that, right? So, but because and what is the value of product-led growth? Value of product, it's lean, more value per user, you will be able to see value in a very meaningful way, right? So there are companies which have thousands of employees, right? Even SBI has product managers, but do you think they have a good product? Not really. Not really. Are you really? But they have optimized it for scale in that sense that so that is their criteria, because they know their banking business will die if that goes down. But have they really optimized it for experience? Not really. They don't care about that. That's not something that they worry about. Similarly, IRCTC, they have optimized it for scale. They know that the website should not go down. You should be able to do your ticket. But have they really optimized it for experience? Not really. That's not what they do, right? So you have to choose. And if you don't choose your companies wisely, you will end up in very, very poor places. And then you will say, there's midlife crisis, there is this, I don't have depth, I have to do this, I have to do that, right? So things like that, right? Make sense? Aage chalte hain, theek? So this is my recommendation to you. Talk to at least 8 to 9 good product managers, especially about the good and the bad about the role, right? एक तो मेरे से बात कर ली, चलो मेरे को तो थोड़ा बहुत जो आता है वो तो मैं आपको वैसे ही बता दूंगा, ठीक है. Besides that, talk to 7 8 people and try to understand very meaningfully about the role, even if you're a product owner, right, and you want to transition into a product manager, right. Even if you're an entry level student, even if you have 10 years of experience, even if you have 20 years of experience, doesn't matter, right. You should at least have a bifurcated view of people about the good and the bad and the ugly about the role, ठीक है. Make sense? Sorted. तो अभी भी इसके बाद पीएम बनना है, चलो फिर ये भी मानते हैं, इसके आगे चलते हैं, ठीक है. Splendid. Now, what is the best place to become a PM? Can somebody tell me? Can somebody tell me? Yes. What is the best place to become a PM? एक तो चलो wrong answer बता देता हूँ. Wrong answer is business school. Business school is not the best place to become a PM. I'm sorry, right? This is true. Do people become PMs from business schools? Tons of them. But yet I am saying it's the wrong answer. फिर repeat कर रहा हूँ. Do people become product managers from business schools? 100%. Tons of them. But is it the right place to become a PM? Not really. You join a business school because you want to grow as a person. You want to learn. You want to get the. यही मेरा podcast काफी time पहले आकाश गुप्ता के साथ हो रहा था. And this is the very same question that he asked me, right? That why do Shravan, you have said it at so many places that don't do an MBA to become a PM. Don't do an. I typically say that people lose context. I typically say it with context. If you want to become, business school equips you with the skill sets that you want to become a PM. But it is not the only, if you want to become a PM, that's not the reason you should join a business school. You should join a business school because you want to learn and grow as an individual, right? You want to build a network. You want to essentially evolve yourself in different dimensions, in business side, growth side, learning side. And overall, it should be an evolution of you as a person in 1.5 2 years. Right? You should evolve not only just emotionally, empathetically, culturally, in every dimension. So if you are going there for an experience to become a better human, a better analytical thinker, a better structure or better business acumen that you want to have, great place. Go there, and a byproduct will be that you will get a PM role as a byproduct of it. But if you really want to become a PM, and that's why you're joining a business school, I'm sorry, that's not the right way to look at it. You don't join ISB just because you want to become a PM. You join ISB because you want to learn, and then the byproduct can be you becoming a PM out of it. Make sense? Sorry. आगे चलते. So don't fall for the deferred life plan. MBA first, PM next. This mindset is harmful. Please, I'm trying to tell you. So, but a lot of people from ISB become PMs. The reason for that is very simple, because you become better. It gives you 3-4 things. Like I was telling Dilip, if you go to ISB, it tells first thing, you get credibility. Aage credibility. Second, it gives you a very powerful network. Third, it gives you the access to very good professors who can teach you good business acumen. Fourth, it's a structured way of learning. If you typically join some PM program or something like that, like my program for that matter, I am very intensive in what I do, but still, you have to put your effort. वहां पे आपने 40 लाख रुपए दिए होंगे तो वहां तो पढ़ोगे ही, नहीं पढ़ोगे क्या? 100% पढ़ना पड़ेगा, नहीं तो घर से गाली पड़ेगी, घर वाले बोलेंगे भाई इतने पैसे क्यों खर्च दिए, राइट? ये तो वहां तो सब कुछ आपको डंडा पड़ रहा है ना, तभी तो आपको सारी चीजें करनी पड़ रही है, तो इसीलिए तो लोग ले रहे हैं आपको. दैट इज वेरी सिंपल. तो थोड़ा सा रैशनली एक लेवल नीचे जाके देखो ना, काम क्यों चलता है, राइट? एन MBA डिग्री इज अ डोर नॉब, इट्स नॉट एन एस्केलेटर. और ये भी मैं बताता हूं, आज की डेट में मुझे आप एक चीज बताओ, मैं आपसे एक सिंपल सवाल पूछता हूं. IIT रुड़की 2015 में से 2015 में बहुत सारे लोग ग्रेजुएट हुए. Lot of people graduated from the 2015 batch of IIT Roorkee, right? How many people do you know besides one person who is sitting in front of you, which is Shravan भैया? कितने लोगों को जानते हो 2015 बैच के? वो मुझे भी इसलिए जानते हो क्योंकि प्रोडक्ट मैनेजमेंट थोड़ा बहुत पढ़ना है, नहीं तो वो भी नहीं जानते होते, right? So where did it help? It probably helped me in my first job. Besides that, did it ever help? Not really. Maybe in one, आज की डेट में somebody who wants to hire Shravan, does he say, oh, I want to hire Shravan because he's from IIT Roorkee? Not really. He's going to talk about what I've done over the years, right? Makes sense. So it's a doorknob. ये मत सोचना कि इट्स एन एस्केलेटर, कि एक बार आपने IIM से MBA कर लिया तो जीवन भर उसकी रोटी खाओगे, ऐसा नहीं होता. It helps one place, some places it will help, some places it will not help. It builds some level of credibility, but it is your acumen and it is your consistent upskilling process that is going to be very meaningful for you. Okay? So I would really recommend, spend at least 20 hours with the best free career research tool on the planet. I've mentioned free specifically here. Discovery करो सर, गूगल पे जाओ, प्रोग्राम, अगर आपको कल को कोई प्रोग्राम भी करना है, कुछ भी करना है भाई, 1 घंटा लगाओ उस पेज पे, अपने करियर के बारे में सोचो, बोलो कि भाई क्यों बनना है पीएम, इसलिए थोड़ी कि सिर्फ 25 लाख की नौकरी लग रही है वहां पे, ये सोचो 25 लाख मिल क्यों रहे हैं, या फिर 40 लाख मिल क्यों रहे हैं। तो मैं आपको यही, अपने स्टूडेंट्स को यही बोलता हूं कि आपको पैसा देना कोई बुरी बात नहीं है, कोई बुरी बात नहीं है, बट इन्वेस्ट टाइम, व्हाई शुड यू इन्वेस्ट मनी देयर, व्हाट इज द वैल्यू दैट यू शुड डिराइव, आस्क डीप क्वेश्चंस। एक और चीज मैं आपको बताना चाहता हूं, द क्वेश्चंस दैट यू आस्क shows how deep your mindset is. Very simple. A person comes to me and says, can you fix my resume? And another person comes to me that my resume has these five problems. How do I translate them into very meaningful way? I will help the second person. I will not help the first person. It just tells me the first person never even gave time. जब उसने खुद ही अपने रेज्यूमे पे टाइम नहीं लगाया, तो मैं क्यों उसके लिए टाइम लगाऊं? सही बात है ना? तो इसीलिए your questions tell you. That is how people test you. That is how why the elevator pitch का concept पता है ना? Elevator pitch क्या होती है? कि 60 सेकंड में आप ऐसी, it's not about those 60 seconds you have to pitch. The 60 seconds in an elevator are to decide that whether I should give this person 1 hour or not. That is what the 60 seconds decide. What is, और एक और चीज आपको मैं psychological चीज बताता हूँ. When you typically talk to someone, the order of information that you're speaking now, the first thing that comes out of your mind shows your priority. So if you are in a PM interview, the first thing before even you ask for culture or something like that, and you say, what is the compensation? It just tells you what you are more focused on. It tells you a lot of things about the person. So listening is way more powerful than speaking, my friends. Listening is a way more powerful skill set. So if you really want to know how a person is, now listen, don't say anything. It'll give you a lot of understanding about what the other person is, right? So what is the best place to? The first answer is your current company. That's the first best place to become a PM. That's your first answer. First answer. There are multiple answers, but there's first answer, right? Okay. You can get hands-on experience at your current company, get the skills, perspective you need to do, you need for your people to take seriously when you do want to have job. Observation, simple. Start by just being around product managers, shadow them in their meetings, right? Approach a PM, say that I want to help you out. You do so many things, right? You do so many things. Can I help you in one of the small things? And I will take end-to-end ownership of it. First thing is, you don't necessarily have to have a title of a PM. मैं फिर आपको मैंने क्या बोला? एक PM का मतलब होता है whole shippable experience. Like for example, you have your boss, and your boss does 5 things. He also takes care of the Jira board that you essentially work on. He also takes care of the dashboards that you look at. He also talks to sales. You say, I want to take one thing completely end to end. I will solve it for you. I will solve the problem for you. I will not say I will own the Jira board. I will improve productivity for you. That's what you will say, right? And then you solve. That shows a skill set. That shows that you have a product management skill set. Because I told you, PMs are loyal to solving the problem. They are not loyal to processes. They are not loyal to tools. A lot of students come to me and say, "भाई आप अपने प्रोग्राम में ये टूल पढ़ाते हो?" तो बोलो भाई मेरा यही काम है, मैं टूल पढ़ाऊं, टूल की डॉक्यूमेंटेशन वहां दी हुई है, जब खुद नहीं पढ़ सकता तो उस चीज के लिए you have to ask me, how do I use CleverTap or this kind of a tool to make a very powerful business funnel and look at the right metrics? That's the right question to ask. But if you ask me, how do you use Jira? Then why have they built the documentation? Is this why you want to utilize my time? You have to learn, how do I use Jira to make the core KPI is reduce developer hours. That is what I want to do. That is where productivity is saved. That is where cost is saved, right? So that is why I keep saying, pick up one problem, one fundamental problem, and try to solve it. And say, I want to improve cost. I want to improve efficiency. I want to do something. And you go out to your manager and say, and take a small project. Initially, nobody's going to give you a big project. Take a small one. Do that perfectly. Solve it. Take another one. After 3 projects, you will essentially have gained so much confidence. They will happily tell you that you should become a PM. You should become a, or even if you don't become a PM, if you go to the other company, these 3-4 projects only become your experience. And you say that this is what I've done. And they will happily take you, right? So the first thing is offer to help out, right? Shadow PMs at their meeting, right? become the biggest source of ideas. Talk to customers and give ideas to your product managers and say, this is what you can solve, this is what you can solve. That is when you become hard to ignore, right? A lot of times, do you know how engineers used to take my mind, space of mind? They used to give me very good ideas, and they used to say, Shravan, you are implementing this feature, but I think this idea is there. And they would have thought about it. It's not just they were just giving blatant ideas. They were saying, this is why I'm saying about it, this is the rationale behind it. And that is the reason a lot of engineers became product managers. And the easier way, right? See, wait, this is too much work. Isn't there an easier way? It's about being resourceful, which is the key quality of a PM. Resourceful, pata kya hota hai? What do you mean by being resourceful? Leveraging your current resources to solve the problem. One of my bosses, who is the CMO of a $1 billion company now, right? He used to say, it's not about what you have got as a PM. It's about what you make of what you've got, right? It's the coach mindset. जब विराट कोहली, आजकल तो वो अच्छा खेल भी नहीं रहा फॉर वट एवर रीजंस, बट विराट कोहली, और जब वो अच्छा नहीं खेलते थे तो क्या इंडियन टीम ये बोलती थी कि आज विराट कोहली नहीं है तो अब मैं खेलने नहीं जाऊंगी? It's not about that. It's not about what you've got. It's what you make of what you've got. You are a problem solver. So if you don't come up with solutions, you're not a good PM, right? Makes sense. Or obviously take a good PM class. So do check out my humble plug, readingsystems.in. The live course and the recorded course both are there, so it will be super helpful for you. आपको बहुत अच्छा लगेगा. So a good PM class with fundamental concepts broken down, and you learn and you implement that across, that will be super helpful for you. Super helpful for you. ठीक है? Makes sense. Now do this for at least 6 months, right? गणपति से ही देख लो, 6 महीने तो गणपति को ही लगे, right? It took you 6 months, right? Do this for 6 months, shadow them across, take a good PM class, solve case studies, do things like that, and highlight this in your job experience, and keep writing on LinkedIn. More doors will open, right?